I kept driving towards the bridge. When we got within about 100 yards of it, my blood just went cold. A chill ran over my entire body, and that stayed with me until I got about 100 yards past that bridge on the other side.
Hello and welcome to Odd Virginia in October, everyone. Leaves are starting to fall and the Shenandoah Valley is changing colors. Hope things are pretty as well where you guys are, but it's absolutely gorgeous out here. And yes, we do have a show this October season, and thankfully so, because I took a vacation for September. Today on the show we have a young man named Eric, who shares with us several stories of when he was a child living in Stevens City, the strange things he saw and witnessed there. And he left Virginia for a time and came back in his 20s. And in order to do something spooky in October, he and his girlfriend went out to visit the Bunnyman Bridge, the legendary Bunnyman Bridge. I'm going to let him tell you all about what happened there. Everybody's been asking me for a show on Bunnyman Bridge whenever I bring it up online. And I do plan to have a full episode later on in the future about this topic. I'm going to let Eric give you just a taste of what he experienced there in the Bunnyman Bridge in Clifton. And if you want to share your story on this show, there are now two ways that you can connect with me. One of them is by emailing oddvirginia@protonmail.com. That's oddvirginia@protonmail.com. Tell me a little bit about your story and we can set up an interview. Or if you don't want to be interviewed directly, you can just leave your story in a narrative format and I can read it on the show on your behalf. You can also join us on Discord online, chat it up there. I'll have an invite to the Odd Virginia Discord server in the description below. But if you don't want to talk to me directly and hear my silly voice, but you do want to leave your story, you can now call the Little Oddities voice line and leave a voicemail to be played on the air. The number is 540-416-9690. That's 540-416-9690. You can leave a brief voicemail narrating your short story, and I just might put it on one of the shows. We're still looking to fill out the October lineup, so if you'd like to be on the show this October, please get a hold of me, because here at Odd Virginia,
we're ready to believe you.
All right, Eric, welcome to the show for the first time, for the second time. It's good to have you on, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Yeah, so we've had this conversation once before, and unfortunately my audio corrupted, and thank you for being willing to do it all again. Now, I don't want to mince meat and pretend like this is the first time that we've had this conversation, so I know what's coming, and these are really good stories. I didn't want to lose them. But we had a really good conversation. I want to kind of try to recapture all of that magic, even though I already know what's going to happen. I don't want to assume that the listeners know what I know, right? So I'm still probably going to ask some of the same questions, and you're probably still going to have to give some of the same answers, and we're going to retread some ground. But
that's totally fine.
We're going to have a good time.
I actually wanted that to happen. I wanted to try and make it as much the same as the first one as we could.
Yeah, and it really was a good conversation. I'm super upset that I lost it, but modern technology, even though I spent my entire COVID checks on this computer, apparently the RAM doesn't hold up well enough to keep it in the memory before I can save it. So, Eric, before we get started, let's talk a little bit about who you are. Where you grew up, where you came from. I know you don't live in Virginia anymore, but the experiences we're about to talk about happened in Virginia.
That is correct. I was born in Arlington, Virginia. Lived in Herndon for the first about 7-8 years of my life. Then I moved out to Stevens City. And that's where I spent the rest of my formative years, up until I was about 21. Took a break for college in Tennessee for a year, and then moved back to Fairfax, and I lived there till I was 30. After that, I've been in Texas.
You and I are roughly about the same age, so we kind of lived in that same area around the same time.
Yeah.
I moved out in 98.
And you're just down in Stanton, right?
Yeah, I'm in Stanton.
Yeah, it's right down the road.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's like 2 hours, but that's not that far considering the scope of
No.
this, the size of America.
Mhm.
Do you like living in Texas more than you enjoyed living in Northern Virginia, especially in the later years of it?
The last couple of years have been a little rougher. The summers have been brutal down here. We broke the record this year for the most number of days over 100 degrees.
And what was the topping out point?
100
Fahrenheit.
108, I want to say.
Ooh,
Mhm.
buddy. Does it get where you are? Does it get like muggy? Is it really humid?
When it rains, it does. But we haven't had much of that recently.
Okay. Yeah, we get plagued here with a lot of just muggy days midsummer. It's just super, super wet. The whole all the air's wet and it kind of hurts.
Like you could swim through it almost.
Pretty much, yeah. It gets a little ridiculous. When it's not humid, it's fine. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your coming up and paranormal experiences. So we're starting out. About how old do you think was your first experience? At least the first one you remember.
I was about 10 when I had my first experience. My bedroom window at my parents' house, the blinds, it was kinked to the sides. There were two little triangles, open to the window. And one night, I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't fall asleep. I was tossing and turning. I rolled over on my side to where I could see the window, and I just happened to open my eyes. And there was another pair of eyes staring back in at me. And keep in mind, I'm on the second floor. So I'm 18, 20 feet off the ground.
Yeah, so something would have had to been standing on a ladder, unless you've got like a balcony out by the window.
No, it's completely flat. There's nothing sticking out of that window.
Okay, so we have something that's floating or standing on a ladder there.
Or it's 20 feet tall.
Or 20 feet tall, you're right, actually. That's a scarier thought than the other two.
And I would have heard a ladder, so it must have been floating.
Yeah, ladders are generally pretty noisy. And you said the blinds were kind of slanted to make a triangle, like they were messed up a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, it was
okay.
A little off kilter.
And there were just a pair of eyes.
Yeah.
Staring in. Were they like glowing? Were they red eyes? Were they anything like that?
They were white. It's a perfect circle of white with a black dot in the center.
The thing that strikes me there is you just said perfect circle.
Yeah. Like you cut a ping pong ball in half.
That is very weird.
And we stared at each other for, I don't know, 5 seconds or so. I rolled over real quick. Thought, what the hell did I just see? I'm sure that wasn't there. Rolled back and it was gone.
So at 10 years old, you saw this and you didn't like go running to the parents or anything like that?
No. No, I didn't. And I'm honestly not sure why.
Well, I mean, if they were gone, there's nothing to worry about after that.
Yeah.
I would think.
I guess I just felt kind of petrified by it, though.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I've been petrified by things I couldn't see, so I totally understand.
It was so bizarre. And when I look back and I didn't see it there, I guess you're right. I just calmed down. Okay. Maybe it was.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of cracking myself up right now because I'm imagining Cookie Monster standing on a ladder looking through a window going, "Me want cookie." And I don't mean to be disrespectful in that, but it's just funny to me.
No. I mean, that's honestly what those eyes look like. It looked like Cookie Monster eyes. And that's just what was so strange about it.
So there's something I've heard a time or two before, not very often, but when very strange paranormal phenomenon present themselves to kids, there has been a few recalled encounters that I've heard where people have seen actual like cartoon characters looking in through even crawling in through their windows, like Fred Flintstone, you know. And it's so weird to me because these people will state that stuff as fact. Like Fred Flintstone definitely crawled through my window. And I'll be there like, what is going on with this story? But there is the idea of screen memories, and I don't know what that is. I can't really go into that too deeply because it just doesn't make much sense to me. But there is something very weird about like silly things that kids see in a paranormal experience, or remember seeing at least.
Yeah. Sometimes I think it might just be the brain, interposing something over what they're actually seeing.
Yeah, it could be. I really don't know. That's why I don't delve into it too deeply, because it's like,
it's very
how do you
hard
explain
to tell.
that?
Yeah, it's hard to say really what is going on.
Was that all in Stephen City when that happened, or did you move to Stephen City afterwards?
No, that was in Stephen City.
Okay. So around 10 years old, you were in Stephen City.
Yeah. We moved there when I was, I want to say 8, because I started 2nd grade in Stephen City.
So it's strange to me that that sort of started happening around the age of 10 years old. Because for me, around 1998 is when we moved down to Churchville.
Okay.
And that's when I started having some really heavy experiences of my own. And I'm wondering if there's a connection with the kind of like prepubescent / post-pubescent age, sort of that mid-teens era, where people are starting to really get kind of hormonally charged, starting to feel like really heavy emotions. If there's something from the other world that might be attracted to that, because I've heard a lot of stories, and I'm talking like an astronomical number of stories of people who in their tween years, I guess you could say, have had massive poltergeist experiences, demon possession, all that sort of thing.
There might be something to that, actually.
And to me, the line that I draw is the emotional aspect. I think these things feed on, negative emotions and fear, at least the bad, the bad spirits, if you could call them spirits, are attracted to that sort of thing. And when you're angsty and you're young and you're giving off those vibes of like, I hate my parents, I hate society, I hate the world, maybe something is happening where there are just like these vultures in the astral realm that are coming to get you, in a sense, maybe not to actually get you, but to like, I don't know, influence you in some way.
Influence you, yeah. There might actually be something to that.
Well, I hope I'm right. Otherwise, I'm just going to look like an idiot.
Well, that's why it's a theory.
Exactly.
But no, you might be onto something with that, though. I mean, because I have never seen anything like that. I had never seen anything like that before that age. The body does start changing around 10, 11 years old, so...
Yeah, and I mean, like your hormonal profile changes, especially around the time of puberty. On that line, when did your experiences, as far as you know, stop happening?
Honestly, I think it was when I moved back to Fairfax. I don't know if I've necessarily had experiences. I've seen things like out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah, I've had a lot of that too.
But it could have just been the light shifting. But things I can really verify, they really stopped after I got back to Fairfax. I did have one down here in Texas, but that was unrelated to the ones in Virginia.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can still talk about that. I don't mind. But going chronologically after the, I just want to call them Cookie Monster eyes now. After the Cookie Monster eyes in the window.
No, that's what they look like. That's completely fine.
What was like the next experience you had along the line?
We were driving back from my aunt's house. She lived in Springfield, Virginia at the time. So we were driving west on I-66. This was, I'd say maybe 6 months later, because it was Christmas time. We were driving down the interstate, and I was looking out the window in my dad's car, and this craft just completely silently flew over us.
You say craft.
Some sort of aircraft, spacecraft. I'm not sure.
So a Boeing.
But it was much smaller than that.
Okay, it was not a passenger jet.
No, this would have held one, maybe two people.
And what was it like? Otherworldly in any way? What are we talking about?
Honestly, it kind of looked like the Naboo starfighter
From Star Wars Episode 1?
From Star Wars Episode 1. That's kind of what it looked like.
Oh, weird.
Or I believe it's the F-104 fighter that we had.
I'm going to look that up real quick. I've never heard of the F-104.
I could be wrong about the model.
Well, it looks like a fighter jet, basically. I mean, there's nothing... as a person who's not an expert on fighter jets, this looks like a basic fighter jet.
It doesn't have big tanks on the wings.
It's got missiles on the wings, it looks like. I don't know if those are missiles, but they look like missiles. I guess you could call them tanks. They're cylindrical.
Yeah, it had that same kind of profile.
That is super odd. Well, was it the same like color as the Starfighter, which was what? It was a yellow kind of.
No, this was it looked like it was made out of polished steel. Because the night I saw this thing, there were no clouds in the sky, and it was a full moon. So there was a lot of light available outside.
So it was a pretty well illuminated night. You got a good look at this thing. My curiosities are the speed and height of the vehicle.
It was very low, and it was very slow.
Slow and low.
Very slow. I'd say this thing was no more than 200 feet above us. And that's probably being generous. But it was only moving maybe as fast as we were. 60, 70 miles an hour.
Okay, so as fast as you were driving on the interstate, that's probably about how fast this thing was flying above your head?
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough speed to get lift.
No, it isn't. In pretty much anything that isn't a helicopter.
Or like a kite, yeah.
I mean, there are a couple of ultralights that might be able to sustain that, but it was not that. This was made of metal, and it was much, much bigger than a craft like that.
Did you happen to see a pilot?
I did not.
I mean, looking at it from the bottom, you probably wouldn't, but I gotta ask.
Yeah, the angle wasn't quite right, and I couldn't really see much of the cockpit, or as you would call it, I guess. But I really couldn't see much of that, and after a second or two, I couldn't see it at all. And
that's still super weird, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard of flying objects plenty of times, sure. Yeah. But when someone sees a metal craft, that is certainly a kind of a gem in the rough, you know? It's not just like a little sparkle in the sky that you see doing weird maneuvers. This is something you've seen pretty close up.
Yeah, no, I could have thrown a rock and hit it.
Now, I don't want to tell you how to feel, but that's pretty lucky, man.
Yes, it is. I don't disagree. And it was just so bizarre because it made absolutely no sound.
Yeah, a helicopter, you'd hear those undulating blades pretty clearly.
Oh, yeah.
They're loud as hell. And with a plane, you hear the jets. So this wasn't that, or it wasn't the other thing.
And even at that altitude, a prop, you'd hear it.
Yeah, of course.
But it was completely silent. You know, I looked at my parents to see if they had noticed it. They hadn't. I looked at my sister. She was asleep. Yeah, I tried to peek out the passenger side window to see if I could get another glimpse, but the trees obscured it by that point. But it
now, something that I'm curious about when it comes to complete complete silence, as you said. And something that I've heard a time or two before was the craft completely silent, or did it mute all sound around you?
That is an interesting point.
I've heard of like strange bubbles when things like this are seen where everything's silent, not just the craft, but like everything.
I will be honest with you, because it's been 30 years almost since this occurred. I don't entirely recall if everything was silent.
That's understandable.
I'm leaning towards no, because I vaguely recall the radio being on.
Okay, so you still had some sort of sound, as far as you remember. I mean, being
believe,
10 years old and
and
this is like 20 plus years ago now.
Almost 30.
Yeah.
As near as I can recall, I believe I still heard like the radio playing quietly and just the hum of the tires.
Okay, so we'll probably say that's not the case then.
I don't believe so. And I think that's why I remember it that way, because it made it that much more remarkable that I couldn't hear it over the car, which wasn't loud.
Yeah, car driving on the interstate's not very loud.
No, nobody was talking. The radio was on very low. And yeah, if it was a normal plane, anything like that, and I didn't hear that.
Yeah, unless you've got some like Mad Max tires with spikes on them, you should be able to hear something flying above you.
And they were not. So I should have heard that.
That's absolutely crazy, man. I don't know what to think of that. Was it a experimental aircraft coming from some? Well, we looked this up last conversation. There really aren't any air bases around there. There are no proving grounds. We don't have any reason to assume that there would be some sort of military aspect to this.
There aren't any facilities in that area that would host something like that. No.
Yeah, not that we know of. I mean, perhaps there is a facility where they're just doing like really long, far travel expeditions. I don't know. Maybe White Sands or something like. I just say White Sands because it's like the default for me. But White Sands Proving Grounds is a place where they do experimental technology, and perhaps like they would just do a slow ride through Virginia. I have no idea.
It's a possibility. Yeah, especially if it's supposed to be a long range craft.
Right. But if it's a long range craft, why is it moving so slowly? I just don't get it, man.
Stealth technology. The slower you go, the less noticeable you are.
Yeah, well, if a 10-year-old sees it, I'm not sure it's that viable.
Well, I'm not a surface-to-air missile site.
You're right.
I honestly can't say, though. It could well have been military. I don't.
I'm not going to rule that out.
No, I don't doubt that.
It just seems so weird to me that that was flying over Virginia. Because in Virginia, we definitely don't have these sorts of things. And, usually when there is experimental aircraft, they stick to their area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Area 51.
Sure.
Push that, but yeah, Area 51. I mean, there's a lot of experimental aircraft going in and out of there all the time.
Yeah, and that's been well proven, like documented on video. That's a thing for sure. Craft that can do things that we don't comprehend, but nowhere else has that ever been proven. And here you are seeing it on the interstate.
Well, maybe there is a base out there, and it's just not on the map.
And that could be the case, dude. We don't know what covert ops are happening anywhere at any time. Not only are we not made privy to this information, but high-level government officials are not made privy to this information. I remember talking to a coworker of mine pretty recently, I would say within the last 2 or 3 years, and they were like, why wouldn't the president know about covert programs on UFOs? And I was like, are you kidding me? He's in and out every 4 years. Like he is not in a need to know sort of position.
Plausible deniability.
And you hear about these special access programs.
Mm-hmm.
It's only the people who really, really need to know. And of course, those
Yes.
people are only going to be military officials because these are weapons programs.
Of course. The government doesn't need to know. Like you said, they get interchanged all the time.
Yeah, no. Our elected representatives are definitely not in a need to know position.
No.
Anyone who thinks that the president is the guy, despite being the commander in chief, if anyone thinks that he's the guy who's in a need to know position, is stupid. I'm sorry to say that.
No, you're right. That was actually one of the things that Independence Day got right.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they got
what a good movie too.
Area 51, excellent movie. But my God, why wasn't I told about all this? 2 words, Mr. President: plausible deniability.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It really is it.
Don't tell them what we're doing here, and they can't say.
So after you saw the Naboo Starcraft and the Gungans, what else happened after that?
Well, I have 2 other stories from the same house. One which I did witness personally, and one which I did have verified by another person. I'll start with the latter. A friend of mine lived in Stephen City as well, but in the old part of town. His house was built in the 1890s, I think. Very old house. He had a little miniature pinball machine, and it had a little robot on the top. It would swing back and forth and say things to you. No, you'll never defeat me. You can't win. Ha ha ha. Things like that. He was playing that one day with another friend of his, and I also know his other friend through school and work. And
all right, so you know 2 sources of this story.
I know both people involved. Yes, they were playing it one day, and the robot at one point just stopped and looked at them and said, "I am going to kill you."
What?
Yes, I am going to kill you. And they just kind of looked at each other, looked back at it, and it was doing its normal thing again, just moving back and forth. And I asked the other guy about it a few years after the fact, and he was genuinely terrified that I brought that up.
Okay, so that had an effect on him.
Oh, yes. Excuse the language, but when I asked him about it, he looked at me, his eyes got really big, and he said, "Dude, I don't even want to fucking talk about it." So, yeah, something happened. It's that. And it was not normal.
Yeah, I would say so. That's a bit scary. I mean, you're talking about a pinball machine where these things are pre-programmed.
Yes,
and that particular phrase is not.
No, I mean, this was 20 years ago, so that technology wasn't where it is today. You could only program half a dozen, maybe 10 different phrases for that thing to say.
Yeah, so there's this thing with baby monitors where people will hack into baby monitors and start talking to babies. Because they're connected to a network. Yeah. They're wirelessly.
I've heard of that.
This is way before that was. Way before that was the thing.
We didn't have wireless internet back then. I barely had dial-up in my house.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The excruciating sound of dial-up.
The excruciating sound.
I'm not sure if you've heard of haunted toys before, but there are definitely things that happen with child objects.
Oh, of course.
I
mean, they based a whole franchise upon that. Chucky.
Well, yeah, Chucky is the goat of that sort of thing,
right?
But this is a reality: is that there are, and we talked about this before on the show. There are childhood objects that even without batteries will work electronically and do things they shouldn't do, and that's the prime example right there of something literally making eye contact and saying, "I'm going to kill you," when it's something that's supposed to say, "I will win, I'm going to defeat you," blah 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 blah. It's not in its programming. It's not what it should be saying, but it makes a threat anyway.
I'm just glad I wasn't there to witness that.
I'm glad you weren't there to witness that either, because
I'm pretty sure I would have set that thing on fire.
the scarring that would give you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember last time we talked, you said that this guy had more stories from this house.
He
Do you
had
want to go into any of that?
he had quite a few. Unfortunately, again, most of which I've forgotten. But I remember one specifically he told me. He opened his closet doors one day in his bedroom. And it was kind of like in the first Ghostbusters when Dana opens the fridge and just sees that portal to another dimension. Zool. Yes, exactly. That's basically what he saw. Except it wasn't pink. It was like a sky background, kind of blue with a hint of gray of light clouds. And a horse-drawn carriage was running full speed towards him.
Wait, was it on top of a skyscraper like in the Ghostbusters movie, or
no?
No, I think in the Ghostbusters actually it was more of a temple.
At the end, yes, there wasn't a temple. Just he opened his closet. His stuff wasn't there. It was that background instead, and this horse-drawn carriage is running full speed towards him. And he told me as well that he'd actually heard it running through their attic before that, but no one else in the house could.
Wait, so he heard a horse-drawn carriage running through his attic, as he claims.
So he claims.
That's strange, man.
He was known to be creative with his stories, but having that one validated by an independent source that I know and trust, and the other experience that I had personally there that made me believe him even more.
What experience did you have personally there?
We were up in his room watching a movie one night, and it was the middle of August, and it does get steamy up there sometimes.
I could imagine, yeah.
Yeah. And this house is very old, so the wood, especially on the door frames and windows, things like that, they swell up. I could not physically shut his door to his room all the way. I wedged it closed as far as I could. This door would not open without some effort. We're sitting there watching a movie on his computer, and like halfway through it, the door just creaks open about 6 inches. Nobody was on the other side. There was no breeze. There was nobody on the other side.
That door should have been stuck shut.
It was stuck shut.
And it's just creaked open like a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So
you had a bit of corroboration that there was something weird about that place.
Oh, yeah. Because I looked at him right after that. And I said, what the hell? Oh, it's probably just the gray man checking in on us.
The gray man?
Another entity he saw throughout the house.
All right, so that was the guy he thought was controlling everything.
That was the guy he thought was actually protecting him.
Oh, so he was one of multiple.
Yeah. The guy in the horse-drawn carriage was not a good person, and he thought the gray man was protecting him from the guy in the carriage.
That's so strange. And where exactly was this happening?
Stephen City. It's right on Route 11.
This was Stephen City.
Yeah.
Okay.
Old Town Stephen City on Route 11, which is Main Street through Stephen City.
Yeah, Route 11 goes through a lot of major towns in Virginia.
Oh yeah.
It comes right through Stanton, goes up through Stephen City.
Mm-hmm.
That is so interesting, dude.
So there's a lot of history in that area.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it would not surprise me if that house had someone in it still.
So yeah, my house was built in the 1940s, and I still have that problem with the thresholds like swelling up and not being able to take the doors.
Yeah.
Like when it comes summertime, my little room that I house my lawnmower in, if I don't like hold it shut with something from the outside, put a dresser in front of it, perhaps. I don't do anything quite like that, but I do prop it shut because you have to. Otherwise, the ferret gets out and she gets fleas.
Ooh, that's not fun.
I've been through some shit in my life, dude, and fleas are the worst.
I'll put those in my top 5.
Do you have a pet?
Oh, yeah. I've had pets all my life. Mostly cats.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
Fleas do not go away easily.
No, they do not. They are bastards to get rid of.
They are. All right, so moving on from a scary killer robot, you have a couple of experiences since then.
I have.
And this is since Stephen City, right?
Yeah, after
you moved out.
Yes, after I moved out of Stephen City. The first one I had was in Fairfax. I think actually the Clifton area. Place called Bunnyman Bridge.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar.
Yeah, most people in that area just tend to be, but I actually wasn't when I moved back out there. And my girlfriend at the time brought it up because it was around Halloween, mid-October, I'd say. And she brought it up and in some conversation. What's Bunnyman Bridge? You've never heard of that? No. So I started doing some research online, found out it was 5 miles from where we were staying at the time. And I read the lore about it, and she really wanted to go down there, to show me the place. And I said, sure, let's go. Because it sounded like, an urban legend. I think the most prevalent story I'd seen at that time was that there was a guy in a bunny suit, killed a couple of people and hung them off the bridge. But that was back in the 70s, I believe. But obviously from these discussions, I believe in the paranormal and the supernatural. But I didn't really take it that seriously as we set off that night. And we're driving through, I really forget exactly where it is, but I want to say it's Clifton. Small little town. It's dark.
Yeah, Clifton's tiny.
Very tiny. So I'm driving up, and we're getting right close to the bridge. I come around a slight bend. We can see it, and she tells me, stop the car. So I stop. 300 yards from the bridge, maybe. I look at her, and even in the light, just from my gauges, she had gotten 3 shades whiter. She was incredibly pale, and her breathing was a little shallow. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Just go ahead. All right. So I kept driving towards the bridge. When we got within about 100 yards of it, my blood just went cold. A chill ran over my entire body, and that stayed with me until I got about 100 yards past that bridge on the other side.
As if there was some sort of a field of energy that affected you.
Yeah.
And this is interesting to me. Did you have to turn around and go back past the bridge?
Unfortunately, yes, I did. Because that was a one-way
home, right?
It was a one-way road at the time. So I had to turn around and go back through that again. And the exact same thing happened on my way back out.
That is so weird.
And as soon as we got off of that road onto a bigger one, we were both fine.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story to me because I get requested to cover Bunnyman Bridge all the time on this show. And I've looked into it, of course. Of course I have. People want to hear about it. I'll look into it. And the thing about the Bunnyman Bridge is that the bridge has nothing to do with the actual Bunnyman story. The bridge part is a total folktale, as far as I can tell. And I'm wondering if it's just it's part of the collective subconscious now that gives the bridge that power, like that weird vibe,
I mean, it's entirely
I'm wondering
possible.
if that's what affected you.
Personally, I don't think so.
What are your personal thoughts?
Because, I had just heard about it.
Yeah.
And the little bit I had read immediately before we went down there, it just sounded like, a folklore to me.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of, the Blair Witch Project, honestly.
Yeah, but do you think that there's a possibility that the people who think about that bridge as being a haunted spot didn't perhaps add energy to the thing that you were feeling, which was the hair standing up on end or whatever, static electricity in the air?
I don't discount that out of hand.
Because I think that people's cognitive energy, or wherever they focus their thoughts, it's proven in prayer, as far as healing is concerned, that people who pray for something end up seeing much more positive results, usually. And in this case, it could be something as well in the collective unconscious that people are focusing on some weird negative energy just on that bridge, and you're feeling it.
Yeah, that is entirely possible.
It's a theory of mine. I can't prove it one way or the other, but I'm just saying that might be a thing.
I don't necessarily discount theories like that out of hand, because the human brain is, I believe, much more powerful than we even realize it potentially is.
Yeah, it's a psychic conduit, I would say.
We just don't have the means to fully access it yet.
Or understand it. I think we can fully access it. I just don't think we get what it's doing.
Well, that's a good point, too. This is beyond the realm of our known science. It's something we can't explain.
And quantum science is actually becoming a thing now, and I think it's really making strides in explaining these things.
That might be the answer. We're delving into things that were never even theorized. This is bleeding edge science. Yeah, it's entirely possible that just the lore behind it built up that feeling. Because, like I said, I didn't really go into it thinking, ooh, this place is haunted. I went into it thinking, yeah, whatever, this is just an urban legend. Ooh, it's a bridge. Big deal.
We're going on a basic drive. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We'll be gone 20 minutes. Big deal. Whatever. But no, I had the exact opposite. There is a presence or an energy there.
I kind of want to go there now. Thanks to you.
I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful drive out there anyway. Do it at night.
Yeah, if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. I'm going to do it.
Well, wait a month and it'll be dark at 8:30.
You're right. October is probably the time to do it.
I think that's why she brought it up, actually.
She wanted to do something scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think we left the house about 9 o'clock that night. It wasn't even late, really.
So well before 3 a.m., which is when things start to go awry.
Well before 3 a.m. It was a weird experience.
Well, I'm about to pretty much collaborate on that experience. I'm going to go out there, come back with a report.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you think.
Or I won't come back with the report. If I don't, it's probably because things didn't affect me the same way. I'm really insensitive to spiritual phenomenon. I don't know if I've told you this before, but I really do not have it. I don't have the touch, as one might say.
I feel like I do necessarily either.
Yeah, you don't feel like you do, but you've experienced things. And
a couple of things.
As a guy who hasn't experienced much and who is extremely intellectually curious about these things, I just have to talk to people about it,
No, I totally understand.
This is how I get my thrills.
Because normal people just don't get it. They look at you like you're crazy.
I'm really not sure what a normal person is, but I'll agree with you.
Hey, well, or varying terms of normal. But, okay, a lot of people, though, if I were to tell my family these stories, they would look at me like I was crazy.
Well, Eric, I don't think you're crazy. And hearing your stories today have been a lot of fun, but it looks like it's time for us to get out of here. So I just want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your stories with Odd Virginia, man. When you listen to shows like Odd Virginia enough, you kind of get used to this creepy, spooky storytelling. And you might not think that it takes a lot of bravery to get on the air and share your story with the world, but it really does. And I want to commend Eric for coming on, because some of these stories are just out of this world, literally. Wish you all the best. And I also want to thank listener of the show, Matt, who connected Eric and me in order to have this conversation. Really appreciate that, Matt. Thank you so much. If anybody else out there wants to be on Odd Virginia, go ahead and write in, oddvirginia@protonmail.com. We got some more spooky stuff coming up for October, so stay tuned and stay odd, my friends.